So this project actually is the result of a collaboration between two organizations, the Community Healing Network and the Association of Black Psychologists. During my 2-year tenure as national president, the director and founder of the Community Healing Network, which actually are lawyers and business people, approached the association and said, we have an idea for community healing. We are clear about the analysis of the need to address root causes that the current mental health system is not addressing in their existing models, but we need some psychologists to help us put some flesh and meat to the scaffolding that we've established in this idea about emotional emancipation in a community healing method. So this is truly a community-driven and community-developed project. The actual circle model itself is the result of many, many iterations of development of the intervention strategy with community input. We have developed a full project and process with absolutely not a single dime of funding. This is, again, it's community driven. And so it has allowed us to not have to be beholden to the existing restrictions about what constitutes evidence, about building on existing models like cognitive behavior therapy and all of those things. We are stepping to the beat of our community's drum. And we have now a training process of facilitators who are all actually leader participants, which when we actually started training psychologists and social workers to also be facilitators, because this is a community self-help model. You do not need a degree to actually launch and lead circles. But when our mental health professionals got involved, they struggled with having to step outside of the role of the healer and also be healed in the process. But they kind of came around. So what is it that we're doing? We have a project that has several objectives, a method that has several objectives. We want to create conditions for healing conversations that lead to individual and collective recovery and wellness. We present material to expose the lies, which we consider to be the root cause of some of the ongoing health disparities experienced by people of African ancestry. These lies are the twin lies of white superiority and black inferiority. Even though we've had all manner of legislation, litigation, protests, marches, crying, praying, etc., we are still at the bottom of every good list and the top of every bad list. So that means something has been missing from the equation. And we believe that it has to do with this narrative, this meme, that actually traces all the way back to Zurara and Prince Henry in Portugal in the 1400s. So we also want to help people to deepen their understanding of the impact of our history and the miseducation about who we are, our behaviors, attitudes, beliefs, our emotional lives, our relationships. And out of that foster a more authentic sense of community, because we are now defining outside of the parameters of the lies. And then emphasize the core strengths and virtues we hold as individuals, families, and communities to support our resiliency and ultimately to revitalize ourselves. Now, why do we do this? I feel the need to emphasize these next few slides because I think we, in the mental health field, truly misunderstand and don't take into account the significance of not just personal stress and trauma, but also historical trauma and cultural trauma. So why do we need to do the emotional emancipation circles? Because we as a people have been marginalized and oppressed. And there are historical, social, and psychological reasons that we need to emotionally emancipate ourselves. And like Bob Marley said, and he invoked actually Marcus Garvey, only we can do this work. So, because of that marginalization and that oppression, that is why we cannot breathe, which were actually, some of us argue, some prophetic words that came from the lips of Eric Garner. His last remaining words while he was alive on this earth, I can't breathe. And that was not just that he couldn't breathe, he was sharing what was happening for us as a people. Watts in 1965 couldn't breathe. New Orleans still can't breathe. Ferguson still can't breathe. And I was here doing emotional emancipation safe spaces and a protester actually got it straight, understanding the continuity of the inability to breathe and the different manifestations of this meme, this lie, this narrative. Flint still can't breathe. Baltimore still can't breathe. Our children can't breathe in school. Since our enslavement, our communities haven't been able to breathe for a long time in America. And Frantz Fanon got it, but most of our mental health professionals don't even know Frantz Fanon's work, and so it's not incorporated in our models. We revolt simply because for many reasons we can no longer breathe. Not that we're violent, not that we're thugs, not that we are chaotic. We are responding to the fact that the very life is being choked out of us. And as Dr. King said, somebody told a lie one day. They made everything black, ugly, and evil. That is in the mindset, the heart, the spirit, and the soul of those African Americans and people of African ancestry that are crossing our doors when they're coming for services. This is ingrained in some of the issues that we're seeing with disproportionality and disparities. We're talking about trauma, but not just the personal trauma and personal PTSD. And in fact, when some people argue that we are suffering from post-traumatic slave disorder, I argue back, you can only be post if you're post. We have not gotten out of the marginalization and oppression since our entry into the Americas. So Baldwin put it very, very clearly, and this actually is part of the heart of what our folks are dealing with. We are in a struggle to just be our natural African black selves. And in fact, he said, the American ideal of progress is measured by how fast I become white. And our mental health intervention strategies and our assessment tools and our research methods and assessment tools also therein are based on a white model. Zora Neale Hurston nailed it. She said, if you're silent about your pain, they'll kill you and say you enjoyed it. This is one of the reasons we have to do the emotional emancipation work. We have to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery, and this is work we have to do. So the circles are about establishing a sense of Ubuntu to get to relational well-being. You can't have individual well-being in the absence of collective and relational well-being, communalism and being community-centered, promoting bonding and affection, cohesion, collaboration. And we unapologetically do not use the existing models in psychology. We're not referring to any of the existing theories, research studies, etc. This was community designed and developed. And so we use African-centered principles because, in fact, there is a science in Africa. There is African wisdom about what does it mean to be a human being, what does mental health look like, what does mental illness look like, and how does one address it. The model itself is a circle that meets anywhere from 8 to 11 up to 14 times, on average about 2 hours. They're organized around the 7 keys of emotional emancipation, which are affirmations, and these keys unlock action that are both personal and collective. It includes a menu of activities that are in the leader guide to stimulate discussion, insight, and growth. And then the circles are flexible, so people can pick and choose what and how they do certain things, and so that it fits context. And they can be held in any of a variety of settings, from a church basement to a community center, to the YMCA, to a clinical setting. And they have a clear structure. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it is ritualized, and it is ritualized for a reason. We don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We know that Western psychology and neuroscience has helped us to understand a few things. So we know that repetition helps to rewire the brain. So we are rewiring the brain to have affirmations of who we are outside of the context of the lie. We do ritual to solidify the importance of community and to then translate that outside of a circle meeting to one's daily experience.
So I want to first just start by acknowledging CIVHS and what we do, because that was relevant to this partnership and collaboration that we developed together. So the California Institute for Behavioral Health Solutions is a statewide organization, a nonprofit, that does a bunch of work on mental health and substance use issues statewide with the intention of increasing all of our capacity to do this better. I work particularly on our health equity team, which is focused on cultural competence and diversity. Okay, so we decided to develop this collaboration in terms of identifying the EECs as a particular community-defined practice, realizing that we need to do things differently. If you all think about the presentation that we just had from our RAND presenters, it's very clear that the community of African ancestry is struggling. There's challenges that we're facing, and clear as well from what Cheryl has presented about some of what that is. So we wanted to talk about what works in terms of community and community evidence, and thinking about just defining community-defined evidence. It's practices that a community has used and decides works for them, that may not have a whole bunch of evidence around it, that has not gone through kind of the gold markers and all of that, but the community believes that it works, and we know from the work with the EECs that it works. So CIBHS, from our health equity team, had an opportunity to identify a community-defined practice that we wanted to help implement and support in terms of its sustainability, as well as begin to gather evidence about some of its effectiveness. And so we collaborated with the Community Healing Network, as well as with ABSI. We started just with initial conversations about what is this? What is this practice? What is it that CIBHS does? What are we agreeing to do together? Trying to understand, in particular, when we think about the institution of CIBHS or working within a system, even adjusting our language and our concepts. So as we talk about often groups, this is a healing self-help circle, and so changing our language around that, identifying who the leads would be. Our goals would be to figure out and to really explore how the EECs can be seen as a community-defined practice, to pilot the implementation of it in work settings with professionals. There's also to really explore the measures and how we can begin to better understand its effectiveness, and then see how we can do this work outside of California as well. We used a community development team model, which is frequently used with evidence-based practices, but made some adaptations in order to make this work. It typically involves having groups of people come together that want to implement a practice. I feel like I'm rushing. So what we did was we had folks come together who identified themselves as both facilitators and participants, and trained them on this model, created a booster training for them as well, and then had monthly calls to support them in their practice. There was a portal that exists so that the community members can participate in terms of communicating about the circles that they were doing and support that they might need. CIBHS as well offered administrator meetings, so we had teams of people that were trained that worked, again, maybe they were from churches or a community health center. So we provided calls to support them in their implementation. And again, a piece I want to offer as an adaptation, if you will, was with the typical CDT model, we have what are called administrators. So the leaders from agencies who are coming together to implement a practice who work together. But from this practice with the EECs, we shifted the language to talk about conductors when you think about the Underground Railroad and freedom. So changes that were relevant to this population. We had 19 teams that were invited to participate, 11 teams across the state that actually did participate from different organizations. I want to tell you where they were. They were in Sacramento, Los Angeles, San Diego, as well as the Oakland Bay area. And we collected feedback about their experiences and expected they would be changed just as the participants would. The booster sessions were offered, which was kind of new in terms of after the initial training and people launched the circles. We met again in 6 months to kind of check in about their work, right? They were getting monthly support. And we're able to identify how to address issues that were coming up, issues around minors and different things related to that. We saw some early observations. I want to make sure we get a chance to talk a little bit about some of the preliminary data, which we are still 1 minute. Okay, I'm going to turn it back over to Cheryl. We saw some tangible gifts with the debriefings, and I'm just going to turn it on.
And I will cut to the chase on the data. So I think it was Cameron who said not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. We actually did find, we did a series of measures. We used all standardized measures. We piloted. The community hated all of the measurements. They absolutely detested them, and they told us that on every chance they got. But one of the things that we did find, so things were moving in the right direction, you know, so there was change, but it really wasn't meaningful, wasn't statistically significant. However, what we found was that the more important data was in the qualitative, the structured interviews, the open-ended questions. And people, when we asked them, like, what do you hope to get out of this? To grow and to heal, to have better relationships with other people, to have emotional healing, personally and professionally. And and we also, by the way, the leaders, facilitators also had to do the assessment. And we were expecting and needed to see change in them as well. And so some key things that in terms of the true spirit of how people are impacted, I'm glad I came. I became a part of a caring team who all got stronger from attending. I feel stronger that I want to continue to heal, grow, and participate. It far surpasses the reasons to participate. Each week, there's something to learn and take away and reflect on. The EEC met my expectations and increased my desire for more connection with my community. And we feel that that is an important mediator, maybe moderator, of actual well-being for people of color, the ability to have strong community connection. And the last one I'll mention is, initially I had no desire to participate. It felt like another thing or a chore I had to do. I understand now how absolutely necessary this time was for me, both personally and professionally. Our big takeaway from this is that, you know, the data made me and my team mindful of the danger or problem with only using the hard methodological approaches, that too often quantitative approaches focus on change scores or other indices of improvement, stagnation, or loss. The real changes that transpire in whole communities occur qualitatively in a more complex way that cannot be placed on a measurement scale or averaged in a statistic. So there's not methodological equivalence. I appreciate the comments that were made earlier about language and the meaning of things. I think that we have work to do as researchers to come up with better research methods other than Likert scale surveys. Thank you.